I don't usually do blind dates. In fact, the idea of meeting a stranger, someone whose face I've never seen, whose voice I've never heard, always felt like playing Russian roulette with my peace of mind. But after weeks of persuasion from my best friend, Sandra, I finally gave in. "Come on," she'd said, flashing her mischievous smile. "You need to get out. Stop working, stop overthinking, and just meet someone." So here I was, sitting in a cozy Italian restaurant tucked away on a quiet street, nervously glancing at the flickering candle on my table. The air smelled of garlic and fresh bread, and the faint hum of laughter floated from nearby tables. I tapped my fingers against the wine glass, rehearsing possible conversation starters in my head. "What do you do for work? What are your hobbies? Have you traveled anywhere exciting?" Simple, harmless questions. Nothing too personal. That was the plan. Then a shadow fell across the table. I looked up and froze. The man standing before me wasn't what I expected. Tall, with sharp features softened only by a warm smile. He looked like someone who had stepped straight out of a magazine cover. His eyes, dark, steady, unsettlingly calm, locked onto mine as though we'd met before. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You must be Maya." He nodded. "And you're Daniel. That's what Sandra told you, right?" He chuckled softly, as though he already knew the script of the evening. I forced a polite smile. "Yes, Daniel." The waiter appeared with menus, but Daniel didn't bother opening his. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his eyes never leaving me. "You know," he began casually, "you look just like your father did when he was your age. Same eyes, same expression when you're nervous." My heart skipped. "What did you just say?" He tilted his head, studying me with that same calm intensity. "Your father, Mr. Douglas." His friends used to call him DG the Fox, didn't they? Always 2 steps ahead, always clever. Name. The nickname. It was something so obscure, so buried in family memory, that even I had only heard it once, whispered in passing at a family gathering. My dad had laughed, brushing it off, saying, "Those were old days, Maya. No one remembers that anymore." But this man, this stranger, had just said it with ease. I felt my throat tighten. How do you know that?" My voice cracked despite my attempt to steady it. Daniel only smiled, taking a sip of water as if we were discussing the weather. "I know a lot about you," he said calmly. "More than you think." The candle flickered between us, and suddenly the restaurant didn't feel warm anymore. It felt suffocating. The rest of the dinner blurred into a haze of forced small talk and strange remarks from Daniel. Every time I tried to steer the conversation back to safe territory, he'd slip in detail. Something about my childhood, my mother's favorite song, even the fact that I used to hide under the stairs during thunderstorms. Things no stranger should know. Things even Sandra wouldn't know. By dessert, I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or walk away. But curiosity pinned me to my seat. Finally, I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "Who are you, really?" Daniel's smile widened, just enough to unsettle me further. "Let's just say," he whispered, "I've been waiting a very long time to meet you." And that's when the lights flickered. For a brief moment, the restaurant plunged into darkness. A chorus of gasps rippled through the room. When the lights returned, Daniel was gone. Only his glass of water remained on the table, untouched, as though he'd never been there. And me. I sat frozen, my heart pounding, my mind racing with questions. Who was he? How did he know so much about my life? And what did he mean by waiting a long time? The blind date wasn't over. It had only just begun. The restaurant had gone quiet after the blackout. Conversations had slowed to whispers, cutlery clinked nervously, and the occasional laugh felt forced, like people were trying to convince themselves it was nothing but a glitch in the power. But for me, the real problem wasn't the blackout. It was the fact that Daniel, or whatever his real name was, had vanished. I stared at the empty chair across from me, my pulse hammering in my ears. His glass of water sat untouched, the condensation sliding lazily down the side. A chair doesn't move by itself. People don't disappear in the span of 2 seconds without a sound. I swallowed hard. Maybe he went to the restroom. Maybe I'm overreacting. Except I wasn't. I knew what I'd seen. One moment he was there, leaning in close, whispering words I didn't understand. The next, gone. I sat frozen for what felt like an eternity before finally grabbing my phone under the table. My first instinct was to call Sandra. Her name hovered on the screen, my thumb trembling above the dial button. What would I even say? Hey, thanks for setting me up on a date with someone who knows the darkest corners of my life and disappears into thin air. Yeah, that sounded insane. So I slipped the phone back into my bag and forced myself to breathe. That's when I heard it. Maya. Name. Spoken softly. Too softly. I whipped my head around, and there he was, sitting at the bar a few feet away, as if he'd been there the whole time. My chest tightened. How? He caught my gaze and smiled faintly, then lifted his glass of water in a mock toast before returning to the table like nothing had happened. Sorry about that, he said smoothly, sliding back into his seat. The blackout startled me. I needed a moment. I stared at him, trying to make sense of it. You were gone. Gone. His eyebrows lifted innocently. I was right over there. I clenched my fists under the table. He was lying and he knew I knew. But before I could press him, he leaned in again, voice dropping to that unsettlingly calm tone. You're still doubting me, aren't you? Still wondering how I know the things I know. I didn't answer. He didn't wait for one. Your mother's locket, he continued casually. The one she lost when you were 12. She never told you this, but it wasn't stolen. She dropped it into the river when she was crying that night. You remember the fight. She told you to go to your room, but you peeked through the stair rails. You saw her throw something, didn't you? My stomach twisted. He was right. I remembered standing on the stairs, too young to understand the shouting between my parents, too scared to come down. I remembered my mother rushing outside, clutching something shiny in her hand, and the splash as she hurled it into the dark. I never told anyone about that night. Not even Sandra. Not even my father. How? My voice cracked. How do you know that? Daniel smiled faintly, swirling the water in his glass. I told you, Maya. I know more than you think. My breath came shallow now. This isn't funny anymore. Funny. His eyes sharpened. Do I look like I'm joking? For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the silence between us louder than the clinking glasses and murmured conversations around the room. Then he leaned back, stretching like a man who had all the time in the world. Fine. Let's make this easier. Ask. Answer. Any question, no matter how personal. The challenge hung in the air. I wanted to walk away, but curiosity rooted me to the chair. Against all logic, against every alarm bell in my head, I found myself asking, okay, then tell me, what was the first word I ever said as a baby? He didn't hesitate. Light. You said light. Your mother was so surprised she laughed until she cried. Your father told her it was a sign. My throat tightened. He was right again. I tested him with another. Where's the scar on my body that nobody sees? Back of your right knee, he said softly. The swing accident. You fell when you were 6. Your father carried you inside, remember? I pressed my hand against the table, nails digging into the wood. Stop. Please stop. But he didn't stop. His voice lowered, almost like a confession now. You've always felt different, Maya. Always felt like someone was watching over you. The way you escaped that car accident when you were 16. The way you found your grandmother's letter hidden inside the old Bible. The way you sometimes dream things before they happen. My chest heaved. Who are you? His eyes glimmered in the candlelight. Someone who's been part of your life far longer than you realize. The words lodged in my mind like shards of glass. Before I could respond, the waiter appeared with our food. Pasta steaming on ceramic plates. But the smell turned my stomach. I could barely think about eating when my mind was spinning with his words. Daniel, on the other hand, calmly twirled his fork, eating like nothing was wrong. Between bites he asked, "Do you want the truth, Maya? Or do you want the comfortable lie you've been living?" I gripped my napkin, trying to steady my breath. "The truth," I whispered, though part of me already regretted it. He set down his fork, leaned in closer than ever, and said, "Then prepare yourself, because once you start down this path, there's no going back." That night, the candlelight didn't feel warm anymore. Felt like a spotlight. And I, sitting across from a stranger who knew every secret of my life, suddenly realized the blind date wasn't just about meeting someone new. It was about uncovering something that had been waiting for me all along. The rest of dinner blurred into a haze. I picked at my food, twirling the pasta aimlessly while Daniel ate calmly, like this was just another ordinary night. But nothing about this was ordinary. Every time I looked up, his eyes were there, steady, unwavering, watching me. Not in a predatory way. No, it was worse than that. His gaze carried familiarity, the way family looks at you across the table. But how could a stranger look at me like that? I pushed my plate aside, appetite gone. "Why are you here, Daniel?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, slow, deliberate, before answering. "Because it's time you knew." "Knew what?" "That the life you've been living isn't the whole story." I almost laughed, but it came out as a broken exhale. "You sound like a bad movie." He smirked. "Or maybe the movies have been warning you all along." I leaned back, folding my arms. "Fine. If you know me so well, tell me something no one could possibly know." He tilted his head, considering. "How far are you willing to go?" I hated the way he asked that, as though my choice mattered more than the truth itself. "Try me." His smile faded. For the first time since the date began, his expression grew serious, almost mournful. "When you were 10, he said slowly, "you woke up one night to find your father crying in the kitchen. He never knew you saw him. He was holding a photograph, not of your mother, but of a woman you didn't recognize. She wore a green scarf. You thought it was strange, but you never asked." My blood ran cold. I remembered. God, I remembered. That night had haunted me in flashes. My father, usually so strong, crumpled at the table with his shoulders shaking. I'd crept back upstairs, heart pounding, never daring to speak of it. But Daniel knew. "Who was she?" I whispered. He looked at me with pity. "The woman in the green scarf. She's the reason I'm here." I couldn't breathe. "You're lying." "I'm not." His voice softened. "And deep down you know I'm not." The room suddenly felt too small, too warm. I needed air. Without a word, I grabbed my bag and stood. Daniel didn't stop me. He simply rose, placed money on the table for the bill, and followed me outside. The night air hit me like a slap. Cool, sharp, alive with the hum of distant traffic. I spun on him. "Enough games. Who are you? Are you stalking me? Did my father send you?" "No," his tone was calm, unwavering. "I've been waiting for you to be ready. Tonight was the moment." "Ready for what?" "To see the cracks in the story you were told." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead, my feet carried me toward the street lamp, my mind desperate for answers. "Then prove it," I demanded. "Prove you're not some lunatic playing tricks." Daniel nodded slowly. "You want proof? Tomorrow go to your father's study. Behind the row of law books, there's a small metal box. He's kept it hidden for years. Inside, you'll find the truth about the woman in the green scarf." My mouth went dry. "How do you know that?" "Because I've seen it." The street around us blurred in my vision, as though the world itself tilted on its axis. And then, as if sensing my unraveling, he stepped closer. His voice low but steady. "Maya, everything you've known is only half the story. Your father isn't who you think he is. And neither are you." I felt my knees weaken. "What do you mean?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he gave me a look I couldn't decipher, part sorrow, part warning, before stepping back into the shadows. "I'll see you soon," he murmured. And just like in the restaurant, when I blinked, he was gone. The street was empty. I stood under the glow of the lamplight, my breath fogging in the cool night, my heart thundering with fear and anticipation. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd check my father's study. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted the answers. The night after the date felt like the longest of my life. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as Daniel's words replayed again and again. "Your father isn't who you think he is. Neither are you." What did that mean? I thought about calling my dad, asking outright. But how could I? "Hi, Dad. Do you happen to have a secret metal box hidden behind your law books?" Well, he'd think I'd lost my mind. So I waited for morning, waited for the chance to slip into his study when he wasn't around. By sunrise, my nerves were frayed. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow looked heavier than it should. Finally, mid-morning, I had my chance. My father stepped out to run errands, leaving the house unusually quiet. I padded across the wooden floorboards, heart hammering, until I reached the heavy oak door of his study. It was always locked when I was younger. He said it was to keep me from playing with his files, but I always wondered what he really kept inside. Now, with shaking hands, I turned the brass handle. The door creaked open. The study smelled like old paper and leather polish. Sunlight filtered through half-drawn curtains, casting golden stripes across the shelves lined with thick, imposing books. I scanned the spines until I saw them. Criminal law, evidence, case studies. The very row Daniel had mentioned. I approached slowly, as if the books themselves might leap out and stop me. My fingers brushed along the spines until I reached for the one slightly askew. I tugged it, and the row shifted. Behind the books, tucked into a hollow space, was a small metal box. Rust kissed the edges, and the lock was old but fragile. My breath caught. Daniel had been telling the truth. I grabbed the box, set it on the desk, and after fumbling for a moment, forced it open with the edge of a ruler. The lock snapped, and the lid creaked upward. Inside there were photographs, dozens of them. Some black and white, others faded with time. And letters, bundled together with a fraying ribbon. The first photograph stopped my heart. It was her, the woman with the green scarf. She stood smiling in the picture, scarf draped loosely around her neck, eyes shining with a strange familiarity that tugged at something deep inside me. I flipped through the others. She was everywhere, beside my father, holding a baby, sometimes standing alone by places I vaguely recognized from childhood trips. My hands shook as I opened one of the letters. The handwriting was delicate, looping across the yellowed paper. "My dearest Douglas, I dream of the day we can tell her the truth. She deserves to know where she comes from. She deserves to know me." I dropped the letter like it burned. Her. Who was she? I dug deeper, scanning the words, heart pounding with every revelation. The letters spoke of love, of longing, of a relationship hidden from the world. They spoke of a child, a girl, a daughter who must be protected at all costs. The realization clawed at my chest. The woman in the green scarf. She wasn't just a secret. She wasn't just some hidden lover from my father's past. She was my mother, and the woman I'd grown up calling Mom, the one who raised me, loved me, comforted me, was not the one who had given me life. I staggered back from the desk, clutching my chest as the room spun. A sound broke the silence. Low, familiar voice. "You found it." I whipped around. Daniel stood in the doorway, calm as ever, hands folded loosely in front of him. Gasp. "How did you get in here?" He ignored the question. His eyes dropped to the box. "Now you see why I came." "No," I shook my head, backing away. "No, this doesn't make sense. My mother, the woman who raised you, loves you," Daniel interrupted gently. "But she isn't the one who brought you into this world. The woman in those photos is." I pressed against the desk, my mind screaming. "How do you know this? Who are you really?" Daniel's expression softened, almost painfully. "I told you. I've been waiting for you to be ready. Because you and we're connected." "Connected how?" My voice cracked. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She was my sister, Maya. The woman in the green scarf. Your mother." The room tilted. My vision blurred. "No, that can't be true." "It is." His gaze locked onto mine. "Which makes me your uncle." I stared at him, my mouth dry, words refusing to form. "You've felt it, haven't you?" he pressed. "The dreams. The moments you can't explain. That sense of being watched, guided." "It's her. She's never left you." Tears stung my eyes. Why would my father lie? Why would he hide this from me? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because the truth would have destroyed everything he built. And because her death wasn't an accident. Froze. "What?" He looked away, pain flickering across his face. "Your mother didn't just disappear. She was silenced. And your father, whether by choice or fear, helped bury that truth." The words sliced through me like a blade. Silenced. My mother had been killed. My heart thudded painfully. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know who you are," Daniel said firmly. "And because the shadows of the past are starting to wake. If you don't face them, they'll consume you." The air in the room felt heavier, colder. The photographs, the letters, Daniel's steady gaze. All of it pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I stumbled to the window, staring out at the bright daylight that suddenly felt like a lie. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard a faint whisper, soft and familiar. A woman's voice, calling my name. "Maya." I closed my eyes, shivering. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she'd never left me. But if that was true, then the past I thought I knew was about to unravel. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. The hours after Daniel's confession blurred into a fog. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think straight. I paced my room until the wooden boards creaked in protest. Every corner seemed to whisper with shadows, and every breath felt borrowed. Daniel's words looped endlessly in my head. "She was silenced. Your father helped bury it." I didn't want to believe it. My father, the man who raised me, who held my hand when I was scared, who kissed my forehead goodnight, couldn't be part of something so monstrous. And yet, the letters and photographs said otherwise. When evening fell, I gathered my courage and went downstairs. The house was silent, but I knew he'd be home soon. I had to confront him before fear swallowed me whole. The box still sat on his desk. I hadn't moved it, hadn't dared to. I wanted him to see it, to know I knew. The front door clicked open. My father stepped in, carrying groceries, humming to himself. For a moment, he looked like nothing more than an ordinary man coming home. But when his eyes landed on the open box, the color drained from his face. "Maya," he whispered, setting the bags down slowly. "Where did you—" "I know, Dad." My voice cracked. "I know about her." He froze. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to steady them. "What did Daniel tell you?" My breath hitched. "So it's true. He is my uncle." His jaw tightened. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire ready to snap. Finally he nodded. "Yes." Tears stung my eyes. "And my mother, the woman in the scarf." His expression softened, grief flickering in his gaze. "She was everything to me, but we couldn't be together. Not the way we wanted. Her family wouldn't allow it. And then..." He stopped, eyes darkening. "Then she died," I finished bitterly. "Or should I say was killed?" He winced. "Tell me the truth." My voice rose, breaking. For a long moment, he just stared at me, weighed down by years of secrets. Then he sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he murmured. She was caught up in something dangerous. She wanted to expose it, a case I was working on. Corruption, powerful men who would do anything to stay hidden. She thought the law could save her. But the law failed. My chest tightened. So they killed her? Yes. His voice cracked. And they told me if I wanted to keep you safe, I had to let her memory die. I had to bury the truth. The room spun. Safe. He'd kept me safe by stealing my mother's story, my identity. He had traded truth for silence. Do you hate me? He asked quietly, eyes glassy. I opened my mouth but no words came. I didn't know. I hated the choices he made, but part of me still loved him. The conflict ripped me in two. The air grew heavy, colder. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, though they were closed. The lamp flickered, and then a whisper, soft, feminine. Maya! I turned, heart pounding. The room seemed to shimmer, and there she was, not in flesh but in presence. Faint, glowing figure. The woman with the green scarf. My mother. She stood by the desk, her eyes fixed on me, love radiating from her spectral form. Tears blurred my vision. Mom! My father gasped, his face pale, as though he too could see her. And? He whispered, voice trembling. The ghostly figure lifted her hand, pointing first at him, then at me. A warning. Plea. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. The shadows of the past are starting to wake. Understand now. The truth could no longer be hidden. The figure's lips moved, though no sound came. But I knew what she was saying. Tell her story. And then she was gone. The room was silent again, except for the sound of my father quietly weeping into his hands. I stepped forward, my own tears streaming freely. For the first time in my life, I felt whole and broken all at once. I touched the photographs gently. I'll tell the world, I whispered. I'll make sure no one forgets her. My father looked up, his face streaked with sorrow. If you do this, they'll come after you too. I met his gaze, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. Then let them. I won't be silent. Not anymore. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, as though the heavens themselves bore witness. That night, I gathered every letter, every photo, every shred of truth. And for the first time, I felt my mother's presence not as a haunting, but as a guiding light. Her story would no longer be buried. Her voice, through me, would finally rise.